Has the ceasefire with Iran collapsed? Tensions between Iran and Israel escalate on both sides, and the two are preparing for the worst. And closer to home, IDF continues to intensify the fighting in the Gaza Strip, and the cabinet in Israel is discussing the possibility of another wide-scale military operation. A meeting is scheduled this week in Washington between senior Israeli and American officials as Hamas continues to refuse the release of the hostages, and the security leadership is preparing for the possibility that Hamas will reject further proposals and the widespread looting of humanitarian supplies in the Gaza will continue. And meanwhile, in the northern arena, Hezbollah has been severely degraded as around 5,000 of their field commanders and senior operatives have been eliminated. The United States is also increasing pressure on Lebanon's internationally recognized government and the National Army to disarm Hezbollah. Next door, in Syria, the Shiite axis has lost its backdoor into the Levant in this region. To the south, the Houthis fired another ballistic missile at Israel late on Tuesday evening, once again sending millions, including my family, into shelters. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. I'm your host, Yair Pinto, bringing you the full truth about what's happening in Israel. Soldiers from the IDF's Kfir Infantry Brigade located large amounts of weaponry inside Khan Yunis over the last 24 hours. This is in Gaza, and they demolished the stockpile on site and observed a large number of secondary explosions from this demolition. Hamas was also busy over the last 24 hours, looting humanitarian aid trucks and firing on Gazan civilians who tried to get something from themselves. Israel's political leadership is discussing various possibilities for how to proceed if Hamas continues to refuse to release the hostages. Options being discussed including taking control over all of Gaza or besieging areas within it. And meanwhile, preparations continue in Rafah to establish the humanitarian city, and the security system is not giving up on that idea. In diplomatic news, the United Kingdom has decided to give a prize for Hamas and for terrorism. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced on Tuesday evening that the United Kingdom will recognize a Palestinian state as early as September if there is no significant change in the situation in the Gaza Strip, according to his statement. Speaking of diplomacy, Hamas has issued a statement directly attacking President Trump, calling him a murderer through its media mouthpieces. And the website El Risala.net published a special article this week to make accusations against the United States president following his statements that the United States has provided immense aid to the Gaza Strip. For his part, President Trump has said that Hamas does not want to release the hostages and they are to blame for all the current situation in Gaza, but Israel will also have to make difficult decisions, adding, "I know what I would do." And in a related story, the New York Times newspaper published a correction piece admitting that a photograph of Muhammad el-Mutawak, a young Palestinian boy who has become the symbol of the famine in Gaza. This narrative is misleading because this boy suffers from pre-existing conditions. The photograph was widely distributed and used in news reports about Gaza in media outlets all over the world, leading to immense pressure that's being put on Israel. However, Israel isn't the only country in the Middle East under pressure now. The United States is increasing the pressure on the Lebanese government to make an official decision to disarm Hezbollah before renewing negotiations on IDF withdrawal from the south of the country, and the Trump administration is considering to stop pressuring Israel not to attack Hezbollah again or withdraw its forces from that country. On that note, about 6 months after the ceasefire in Lebanon, the Northern Command has issued a report summing up their achievements, including an estimate that Hezbollah has suffered significant losses and morale is low as their ability to strike Israel or even defend against their other regional enemies has been significantly reduced. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on day 663 of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and all the other armed groups in this region that are operating under the orders of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the head of the crumbling axis of evil in the Middle East. A moment before we start, I want to ask you to help us spread the truth from the Holy Land. We are fighting together for truth, and this is a front that Israel is losing in this war. Every day, fake news and lies about Israel are being spread, and we at Boots on the Ground are fighting to share what really is happening with you. So guys, share our videos on YouTube, follow us on social media, hit the subscribe button, and guys, if you want to do more, you can stand with Israel. We at TBN Israel launched a campaign, so if you want to donate, you can go to tbn.org/standwithisrael. Again, that's tbn.org/standwithisrael, and help us create more videos, more content, so that people will know what really is happening in this land. Let's begin today's report with the fighting in the Gaza Strip. Combat team forces of the Golani Brigade under the 36th Division are operating in the Khan Yunis area of the Gaza Strip. As part of the activity, Golani fighters and Yalom fighters located a tunnel over the last 24 hours that was 1 kilometer long and about 15 meters deep underground, inside which Hamas had hidden weaponry, including explosive devices, AK-47 rifles, and RPG rockets. The tunnel was destroyed, but not completely. In addition, the forces eliminated dozens of terrorists and destroyed many terror infrastructures, including military buildings, a weapons cache, observation posts, and launch positions. On Tuesday, Kfir Brigade fighters that are operating in southern Khan Yunis carried out raids on locations where many weapons were stored. Amongst the weapons that were found were magazines, grenades, ammunitions, diving gear, and combat uniforms. The forces continue to operate in the Khan Yunis area of southern Gaza to locate and destroy Hamas terror infrastructure. And at the same time, the 98th Division of the IDF and its forces are expanding the fighting in the northern parts of the Gaza Strip, in the Sajaya and in the Zaytun areas. In the northern parts of Gaza, 162nd Division and the 99th Division forces are working to destroy terror infrastructures above and below the ground. During the past 24 hours, several terrorists were eliminated by ground forces, while the Air Force struck dozens of terror targets across the Gaza Strip. Amongst the targets were terrorists, military buildings, launch positions, weapons depots, combat tunnels, and additional terror infrastructure. This current action joins a series of intensive operations that were being carried out in the Gaza Strip as part of the ongoing effort to break Hamas's terror infrastructure and prevent harm to the forces and to the Israeli civilians. Guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on every development in the fighting on the ground against Hamas in Gaza, and as always, we invite you to be part of the team and keep spreading and supporting the truth. Every dollar that you give helps us continue to bring what really is happening to you. So guys, hit the donate button on YouTube or join our campaign to stand with Israel. Go to www.tbn.org/standwithisrael so that together we can keep spreading the truth. And now we continue reporting on the ground from Hamas terror organizations dishonest narrative about a famine in the Gaza Strip. This was widely covered by the international media and resulted in tremendous pressure against Israel. To start, I need to tell you about the Hamas internal security unit called Shaham. In Arabic, it means arrow. This unit is mainly meant to be kind of a police force to ensure internal stability and order within the Gazan civilian population in the Gaza Strip. But in reality, it is an enforcer unit which uses extreme violence, including torture, execution, and persecution of civilians that are suspected, even a little bit, of collaborating with Israel or receiving aid. These units focus on hunting for suspected collaborators, which, in the present context, usually means someone who wants to try and get some food for themselves and their families from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation instead of paying Hamas for food that it stole from the humanitarian aid shipments that were sent into Gaza by the United Nations. Since Operation Iron Swords, Hamas's official rule in Gaza has been shaken. Infrastructure was destroyed, operatives were eliminated, and centers of control collapsed. But the Arrow unit represents what survived. Not Hamas's declared government, but the mechanism that it built to continue ruling through fear and deterrence against the population. Footage that are coming out of the Gaza Strip in recent weeks reveal a brutal method. Civilians caught in the area return from aid warehouses and are seized by the unit's members of Hamas. Some are taken for torture, some just disappear, and others are shot in the legs in front of cameras. The Arrow unit of Hamas has become a complex strategic problem for Israel. On the one hand, there is currently no other body in the Gaza Strip that is capable of imposing order, and therefore Israel is, in practice, forced to operate alongside enforcement forces that are run by Hamas. On the other hand, this unit makes sure to eliminate any attempt to build any kind of alternative to Hamas in Gaza. For example, Israeli initiatives to work through local businessmen, clans, or non-Hamas militias encounter rapid assassinations. Figures such as Abu Shabab and others who were recruited for cooperation have been removed from the scene or branded as traitors. So, why is it so difficult for the IDF to strike this Arrow unit? The IDF attacks Hamas operatives and combat positions from the air. But when it comes to the Arrow unit, the story is much more complicated because they do not operate from military bases, but from police stations, hospitals, mosques, or even private homes. They have no fixed military uniforms or vehicles. They blend into the local population in civilian clothing. They also do not attack IDF forces directly and therefore are not a classic target for military intelligence. Therefore, even when information on operatives arrive, fear of harming innocent civilians delays a military response. Meanwhile, fear in the streets of Gaza grows. In addition, note that the IDF has recently had to escort humanitarian aid trucks in Gaza. This is after the accusations against Israel regarding humanitarian aid. Footage that was filmed on July 25th put the rumors to rest. In the footage, armed Hamas terrorists are seen violently looting the humanitarian aid trucks that enter the Gaza Strip and preventing them from reaching the civilian population of Gaza. The footage, as noted, comes after Hamas's claims in recent weeks of deliberate starvation by Israel against the Gaza people. Contrary to Hamas's claims that these were security personnel, the footage clearly shows Hamas terrorists who arrived to loot the humanitarian aid trucks from the Gaza residents. On this topic, I need to point out that the United Nations and many Western governments and other officials have declared on the record and recently, as a few days ago, that there is no evidence that Hamas is stealing the humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip. I find it incomprehensible that they continue to make these claims. And I'd like to hear from you guys in the comments section. What do you think is happening and why the world believes a terrorist organization and not Israel, the only democratic state in the Middle East? Now, as recalled, the Prime Minister's Office of Israel announced earlier this week that Israel will continue working with international agencies, with the United States and with European countries to ensure the flow of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. And as part of the effort to transfer the aid, the PMO stated that Israel has suspended the IDF operations in recent populated areas for Gaza for 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. each day and designated safe corridors from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. to make sure the safe passage of aid convoys into the Gaza Strip. And according to the announcement, Israel already allows significant amounts of humanitarian aid into Gaza every day, including food, water, and medicine. Now, amidst all of this, the New York Times newspaper, which is one of the most influential media outlets in the world, published a correction piece overnight between Tuesday and Wednesday to a report it distributed about hunger in the Gaza Strip, which included a photo of a toddler, Muhammad el-Matawak, who suffers from malnutrition. But the correction also admitted that after publication, the editors learned that the toddler has a pre-existing medical condition, which affects his physical appearance and overall health. In the article published a week ago that was titled, "Gaza Residents Are Dying of Hunger," the story of El-Matawak appeared accompanied by a picture of him wearing a garbage bag instead of a proper diaper, and it quickly became the symbol of this narrative about famine in the Gaza Strip that is caused by the cruelty of Israel. In a related story, last Monday, Kogat published a photo of 5-year-old Osma El-Rakab, which also went viral as an example of hunger in the Gaza Strip, and revealed that he is a child with a genetic disease. And according to the post, the photo was used to falsely present Israel as responsible for his condition and for the humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip at large. However, the post explains that the child suffers from severe genetic illness unrelated to this war. Furthermore, on June 12, 2025, Kogat coordinated Osman's evacuation from Gaza with his mother and with his brother via the Ramon airport in Israel. He is now receiving medical treatment in Italy. I, Yair Pinto, want to ask the New York Times and all the other media outlets around the world, where did you get these pictures? Did you check that they weren't sent to you by the Hamas terrorist organization in order to manipulate the entire world? Make sure you do not take the announcements, the pictures, and the videos that you receive from Hamas terrorists at face value. That's what they're doing. They are using the population in order to manipulate the world. We have been saying this for months now, and there are dozens of examples all over the years of fake photographs being used in this way to support a false media narrative. How many times does this have to happen before the media outlets cover truly what's happening in the Middle East? I guess that we probably won't get any answers to these questions anytime soon, but understand how important it is that together we keep spreading the truth of what's happening in Israel and battle fake news. So guys, help us let you know what's going on in this land. That's what we're doing here. We are sharing the truth and encourage you to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. So guys, if you want to support our efforts in this battle of narratives, please make sure to hit that donate button, hit the subscribe button, and if you want to support us, you can go to our website and join our campaign to stand with Israel at tbn.org/standwithisrael. Now, we're switching our focus to the northern arena, as during the past few weeks, Hezbollah has been trying to rebuild its infrastructure in southern Lebanese villages by bringing in shipments and containers that were purchased through charities linked to this terrorist organization. However, the IDF destroyed these containers, sending a message that it will not allow even partial reconstruction by the Hezbollah organization in the contact line villages on the border with Israel. At present, there are attempts to refurbish 27 buildings in all the Lebanese contact villages so that the IDF is checking the facts and making it clear that any structure built for Hezbollah or raising a security concern will be destroyed. And meanwhile, All along the northern border area with Lebanon and Syria, the IDF is racing against time to rebuild the forward outposts, and the understanding is that construction work on the outposts, as well as deepening the special ground barrier in the buffer area in Syria, can be carried out efficiently during this summer. And after the first rain and the onset of winter, it becomes challenging to perform the work because of water conditions and muddy terrain, snowy ground in some places, and other environmental issues. And meanwhile, the Hamamis, this is an outpost that the northeastmost IDF position inside Lebanon, has recently been undergone reconstruction that includes anti-tank trenches, bunkers, observation and firing positions, protective berms, and many other measures. The new outpost is called Magen Metula, the protector of the Israeli city of Metula, and it provides forward defense for the entire eastern part of the Lebanon border. From it, one can observe deep into the Lebanese territory, from the Beaufort Fort into the deeps of the Ayun Valley, the northern slopes of Mount Dov, and the Jezreel area. The IDF is preparing for a long stay in these outposts while conveying to the Lebanese government that Israel will vacate the area only when the Lebanese National Army exercises its sovereignty in that location and prevents the still-armed Hezbollah organization from re-establishing itself in the south of the country. The United States is increasing pressure on the Lebanese government to issue an official decision to disarm the Hezbollah terrorist organization before renewing talks on an IDF withdrawal from the south of the country. If no public commitment is received from the Lebanese government, the Trump administration is preparing to halt the arrival of Special Envoy Tom Barak and to stop pressing Israel not to attack or withdraw its forces from Lebanon. Various sources said that although Hezbollah officially says it is unwilling to disarm, behind closed doors it is reportedly discussing the possibility of reducing its quality and its quantity of weapons. And circling back to the situation in the Gaza Strip, against the backdrop of stallment in the hostage release negotiations with Hamas, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, is expected in the coming days to hold another cabinet decision on an additional military operation in Gaza. Several significant military plans have been presented to the small cabinet, which, according to the security sources, could change the rules on the ground. Options discussed include a move to bisect and encircle the Gaza Strip, first in the north and later in other areas, as well as a plan to impose full IDF control over the entirety of food supplies to the population centers in the Gaza Strip, and even an intentional push of residents from the south of the Gaza Strip towards the center of Gaza. A central issue raised in these discussions was whether to conduct another maneuver of forces in areas where hostages are feared to be held, especially Gaza City and the central refugee camps in the Gaza Strip. A security source familiar with the matter said the political level is wrestling. There is still no final decision, adding, the IDF is prepared for a variety of scenarios, but a political decision is required. Another political source claimed that these are only theoretical plans at this stage, and that Israel is still trying to exhaust negotiations via international mediation. Simultaneously, the defense establishment assesses that Hamas is holding a hard line in the talks, assuming that Israel will find it difficult to embark on another large move, especially under international pressure and the humanitarian conditions in the Gaza Strip. At the same time, the mediators, Egypt, Qatar, and the United States continue to push behind the scenes, but without much success and nothing to show for it. Within the political system, there is concern that if no breakthrough is achieved soon, Israel will find itself needing to act militarily in Gaza while maintaining diplomatic pressure channels under the complex civilian and the political reality that we are in right now. Now, we move on to the increasingly complex international diplomatic maneuvers that Israel is facing. In the last 24 hours, United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that his government will recognize a Palestinian state at the United Nations General Assembly meeting in September unless Israel agrees to several concessions in the Gaza Strip. The reaction from Britain's domestic political opposition, as well as United States President Donald Trump, was swift. TBN Israel senior Middle East analyst Mati Shoshani will bring us all the details about this situation and what Israel is going through in the diplomatic arena. So Mati, over to you.
Tomorrow in Washington, a decisive Israeli-American meeting. At the center of the talks, the issue of the hostages and the continuation of the fighting in the Gaza Strip. The US has placed the responsibility for the humanitarian crisis squarely on the Hamas terrorist organization. The Israeli-American meeting, which will take place tomorrow in Washington, the headline is Hamas refuses to release hostages. Minister Dermer, the National Security Advisor Hanegbi, and Ambassador Leiter will meet tomorrow with Secretary of State Rubio. State Department spokesperson Bruce says, the images from Gaza are horrific, but Hamas can stop this in an instant. An Israeli source says, the representatives will explain that Israel is committed to eliminating Hamas and bringing the hostages home. The meeting comes amid sharp remarks by State Department spokesperson Tammy Bruce, who last night expressed deep concern over Gaza, but blamed Hamas for refusing to halt in fighting and return of the hostages. Bruce said President Donald Trump consistently promotes peace initiatives and ceasefires in conflict zones worldwide, and that the First Lady is also deeply affected by the Gaza situation. Quote, the president acts from humanitarian motives. He understands the suffering, is shocked by the images, and intends to act, but not at the expense of basic principles, end quote, she said. However, the spokesperson made clear that the administration does not intend to blow Hamas's strategy, which she said relies on ongoing suffering to preserve a reign of terror. She described how Hamas needs the Palestinian people's despair, constant damage, chaos to justify its rule. They do not strive for a solution, they strive to continue terror. Trump said, no more endless cycle. Bruce quoted the president, we will not repeat the same mistake over and over. No more endless cycle of destruction, ceasefires, rearmament, and renewed fighting. She emphasized that the administration continues efforts to ease suffering on the ground, but in a way that bypasses Hamas. We established the Gaza Relief Fund to show that food and humanitarian supplies can be delivered without going through Hamas, Bruce said. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced today, Tuesday, that Britain will recognize a Palestinian state. According to this statement, recognition will take place this coming September. He said recognition would occur before the UN General Assembly unless the Israeli government takes substantial steps to end the horrific situation in the Gaza Strip. This approach may be insufficient for a third of Labour, MPs and cabinet members who urge immediate, unconditional recognition of Palestine. The move follows French President Emmanuel Macron becoming the first G7 leader to declare recognition of a Palestinian state. Macron said France would formally recognize Palestine at the UN General Assembly in September. After weeks of private consultations with Britain and other partners, while Macron claims the declaration itself will spur progress, British officials prefer tying conditions to the step to bring tangible changes in Hamas's stance. Macron was mocked by US officials after his announcement. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio sharply attacked him, stating, the United States strongly rejects the French president's plan to recognize a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly. Rubio wrote, adding that this reckless decision only serves Hamas propaganda and harms peace. It is a slap in the face to the victims of October 7th. Starmer, a Labour Prime Minister, reportedly informed Prime Minister Netanyahu of his planned announcement in advance. He claimed the step is unrelated to internal pressure, despite images from Gaza circulating in world media. Starmer set conditions for Israel: a Gaza ceasefire, assurance of no annexation in the West Bank, and a commitment to a long-term peace process leading to a two-state solution. Prime Minister Netanyahu said Starmer is basically punishing the victims. Netanyahu added, "A jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. Appeasement towards jihadist terrorists always fails. It will fail for you as well. It will not happen." President Donald Trump, finishing a European visit during which he met Starmer, said he had not discussed the matter with the British PM. Asked his opinion, he replied, "It's a prize for Hamas if they do it. I don't think they should get a prize." Starmer faces growing pressure from Labour MPs. About a third of Labour MPs signed a letter on Friday calling for immediate British recognition of a Palestinian state. Former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn attacked Starmer, saying a Palestinian state is not a bargaining chip, it's an inalienable right of the Palestinians, he said. Conversely, parties to Labour's right attacked Starmer, accusing him of rewarding Hamas and of political cynicism. Nigel Farage's Reform UK party, currently polling as the frontrunner in the next election, said Starmer's decision is nothing more than a prize for Hamas. They said the timing is wrong and that he is under the influence of extreme Labour figures. It does little beyond awarding Hamas for October 7th events, he said. Conservative Party leader Kemi Bedonich accused Starmer of running from domestic crisis. The public wants answers on migrant asylum, soaring living costs, and doctors threatening to strike. It's a scandal he convenes his cabinet to try to solve internal labor problem. Recognizing a Palestinian state won't bring the hostages back, end the war, or get aid into Gaza. It's the worst kind of political cynicism. In summary, the decisions and the plan to recognize a Palestinian state by the UK and the French is stirring a lot of emotions and commotion, both in Israel and in the US. And rightly so. It is an attempt to reward the terrorists that carried out the attacks of October 7th and punish the victims of that attack. We're expecting to see this be a hot topic for many days to come, probably only coming to a resolution during the UN General Assembly later in this fall. Now back to Yair Pinto.
So guys, keep spreading the truth, share, and follow us. And support our efforts by hitting that donate button. Together, we must reach as many people as possible and reveal the truth about what's happening in Israel. Now, we are switching our focus to the Iranian front because the ceasefire declared between Israel and Iran at the end of June did not end the years-long tensions between these two countries. In fact, it increasingly appears that this ceasefire only offers a temporary solution, while beneath the surface, both sides continue their military preparations for continued hostilities. The regional feeling is that everyone is standing on the brink of an explosion where any small flare-up could lead to a total escalation. In Jerusalem and Tehran, they already speak openly of a new stage in the confrontation, a stage of fragile mutual deterrence dictated by regional and international considerations, with a timetable that is unclear and dependent on the shifting circumstances. Israel, for its part, continues to strengthen its defensive systems and accelerate production of the air defensive systems, while Iran is swiftly rebuilding its offensive ballistic missile forces and sending a clear message that it will not give up its nuclear program, even at the cost of another clash. Additionally, Israeli security sources assess that Iran is in advanced talks with China for the rapid purchase of air defensive systems and fighter jets, preparing for the next round of fighting against Israel. They believe that Tehran is planning a revenge move in the form of a preemptive surprise attack on Israel in response to the Israeli surprise strike of the 13th of June. It's important to point out in this context that even if Iran receives all this new Chinese equipment, it will take some time for them to train their military personnel in how to use and maintain it, and it will also have to be integrated into the wider Iranian arsenal of defensive systems. This is not a simple or easy process, and it can take a very, very long time. We must also keep in mind what the IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir said on July 20th that the recent clash with Iran was only one stage in an ongoing campaign. According to him, Israel has entered a new chapter in which it must consolidate the operation's achievements, which included disrupting Iran's missile and nuclear programs while maintaining constant alertness. 2 days later, Defense Minister Israel Katz reinforced his words, warning that the likelihood of renewed fighting is high. He said that Iran seeks to establish new global power and that preparations must be early, orderly, and resolute. To that end, in a situation assessment with senior IDF officers, Katz decided on a strategic plan to prevent Iran from renewing its nuclear program. This includes accelerating the Arrow missile production and upgrading the air defensive systems such as the Iron Dome and David Sling. For their part, officials in Tehran also issued some statements. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian stressed that his country will not back down from its nuclear program and that any Israeli strike will be met with painful retaliation aimed at Israel's heart. And in an interview with Al Jazeera, Pezeshkian said that Iran does not seek war but will not hesitate to defend itself at all costs, claiming the nuclear program is purely civilian and within international law. Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi told Fox News that Iran will not relinquish uranium enrichment despite the damage that its facilities suffered in the United States strikes in June. And United States President Donald Trump, who led the mediation for the ceasefire, warned the same day that if Iran resumes nuclear activity, the United States will strike its nuclear sites again. To give some review of what we're talking about here, the last direct military clash between Israel and Iran lasted only 12 days between the 13th of June and the 24th of June, but was intense and unprecedented in its scope. Israel struck nuclear sites at the Fordo, Natanz, and Isfahan, hit ballistic missile plants, and eliminated IRGC senior officers and nuclear scientists, as well as completely destroyed Iran's air defensive array and many other military targets. Iran responded by launching ballistic missiles and UAVs at sensitive sites in Israel, including power stations, intelligence facilities, and military bases, but mostly civilian neighborhoods of major cities. The ceasefire brokered by the United States included no formal political agreement or monitoring mechanisms, making it only a temporary pause, not a stable arrangement. However, Israeli decision-makers believe it is a long-term conflict that Iran is now in recovery and rearming mode. On that note, we must also point out that in recent weeks, a series of mysterious explosions and fires occurred at various Iranian sites. Iranian officials told the New York Times that Israel was behind these incidents, but there has been no independent confirmation of these accusations. Iran also has plenty of enemies besides Israel, including domestic groups opposed to the Ayatollah regime. And with all that in mind, according to the Israeli security sources, Mossad activity in Iran continues, and Israel is actively working to thwart any possible Iranian attack. The defense establishment estimates that, for their part, Iran will prefer to act against Israel through its Middle East proxies, especially the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and Shiite militias in Iraq, and will choose direct confrontation only if the regime feels existentially threatened. Intelligence officials add that Iran is still rebuilding its damaged military capabilities and is in no hurry for direct conflict. They assess that an Iranian surprise attack would come only if Iran sees Israel as diplomatically isolated, bogged down on other fronts, and with eroded deterrence. Furthermore, the Iranian threats may be intended primarily to bolster deterrence against Israel and mainly public morale in Tehran. Yet, after the precedent of April 2024, when Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles at sensitive sites in Israel, the possibility of a rapid attack remains very real. Such a strike could occur especially when the United States policy is stagnant, such as during the election periods when Israel is deeply divided politically or militarily, or when Iran calculates it can achieve a clear military success and restore deterrence. Even then, such a move would be risky for Iran, since Israel's response would likely be devastating and could lead Iran's further international isolation. Nonetheless, the possibility of an Iranian move cannot be dismissed, if only from a desire to restore wounded national pride or any other reason. In any case, as long as there is no political framework, official channels, or monitoring mechanisms, the ceasefire remains very, very fragile. Each side is preparing for the next round, and one mistake by anyone could reignite the flames in this region. As a footnote to all of this, it was reported this week that the American defense company Lockheed Martin has received a $2 billion contract to increase production of interceptor missiles for the Terminal High Altitude Air Defensive System, or THAAD. The report included the fact that the United States military fired 150 THAAD interceptors to shoot down incoming Iranian missiles during the 12-day war, gaining priceless experience that could be helpful in a potential confrontation with other adversaries. However, those interceptors need to be replaced, and that will take time as well as money. On that note, we ask you to remember that Israel is fighting on many physical fronts and winning, but in one arena we are losing: the international front about what is happening in this land. Fake news and anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish propaganda is spreading everywhere, and the results include a massive increase in anti-Semitic attacks worldwide. We would be grateful if you will stand with Israel and support the truth. So guys, share, follow, and hit that donate button on YouTube and help us create more videos and explain what's going on in Israel. We launched a campaign to stand with Israel. If you want to be part of it, go to www.tbn.org/standwithisrael. Help us create more content from this land. We conclude today's report with an update on the threat from the Houthis in Yemen. Late Tuesday evening, millions of Israelis heard a siren directing them to move into their bomb shelters, by the way, including my family and I. And this siren was because of a missile that was fired by the Houthis in Yemen. The IDF spokesman announced a few minutes later that the missile had been intercepted by the air defensive systems, but the airspace over Israel was closed for a short time, and an El Al aircraft en route from Moscow to Israel was instructed to circle over the Mediterranean and wait. This is probably meant as a Houthi response after the IDF last Monday struck and destroyed military infrastructures of the Houthi terror regime at Hudaydah port in Yemen. The IDF said that amongst the targets were engineering tools working to rebuild port infrastructure, fuel tanks, and vessels that are used for military activity and for projecting power against Israel and ships in the maritime area near the port, as well as other terrorist infrastructure used by the Houthi terror regime. So guys, here at TBN Israel, we will continue to spread the truth. So guys, this is a spiritual war. I call on you to unite in prayer. We have said a lot of stuff, a lot of information about what's happening in Israel in the last 24 hours. I encourage you to make it personal. Pray for one IDF soldier, pray for one hostage and his family. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Pray for all the innocent lives that are affected by these conflicts, by these terrorist regimes, and pray that God's will prevail.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.